Hello, everyone. Welcome to the PIPPAMS and Veritas um, cooperative webinar. We have two very special guests joining us, as usual. One, I would like to introduce Quan, the co-director of the Veritas AI program. Quan is a first-generation graduate of St. Olaf College. He focused on applied mathematics and statistical modeling. Along the way, he's discovered a really strong passion for data science, and he's naturally drawn to explore a lot of complex questions about unsolved problems, which I think a lot of which we see in his project here at Veritas AI. He's currently leading the growth for Veritas AI on the international front, and we're so happy to have him with us today. Thank you, Juan.
Yeah, thank you so much for that introduction.
Um,
Yeah,
Yeah. And for our other guest, my boss, we have Krivi here. Krivi is a University of Amsterdam alum, where they also served on, I unfortunately can't pronounce this, Krivi, but would you help?
It was the curriculum committee of the university itself. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Um, as the founder of the company, as the founder and the former head of research and the analytics team, Krithi played a key role in analyzing data-driven student admission outcomes. Over the last 2 years, Krithi has taken the helm as the head of program and partnerships at PIPPAMS, where they've been instrumental in developing the platform into a dynamic space for high school students to explore extracurricular opportunities. Thank you, Krithi, for being with us today.
Thanks again. Super excited today.
Mhm. All right, I have a bunch of questions prepared for our guests here, and I would like to start this webinar off with a question from Kwan here. Kwan, let's do a little refresher. Why should a high school student turn towards AI right now? Since this webinar would be focused towards the AI space mostly, let's get the biggest elephant out of the room, right?
yeah, thank you so much for the question. So right now with AI, we're seeing as probably everyone is seeing such a huge turn towards I guess AI and not only that, but the advancement in technological development and how AI is integrating its way across multiple industry is really amazing. So um right now when students are in high school and they're kind of looking for different extracurriculars or just kind of figuring out what kind of interests they'd like. Um, Being students that might also be interested in going to more prestigious universities or taking on some greater opportunities in like research. AI is actually have playing a role in all of that across the board. And when we think about AI, we kind of think about like ChatGPT or maybe like Google Gemini or kind of like the big name ones. But what Veritas AI does is it actually connects students with research mentorship opportunities to kind of figure out how to solve more complex problems using AI models.
Mm.
Um, that would be things like help detecting cancer in the brain much quicker using AI or
Wow.
synthesizing drugs and or different like proteins and whatnot using AI models. So there's a lot of innovation right now that a high school student could do.
Mm.
And Veritas AI, we have a huge mentorship base internationally, mostly from like US institutions, research institutions. So I think AI is kind of relevant conversation for almost all students. And
Mm.
it's worth something just kind of seeing if it could help, supplement your interests while you're in high school.
Yeah, that's definitely a great point. And talking about AI research in particular, I'm interested to know how college admissions and the college administration view these AI research experiences. And I think Ritvi might have like some inputs on this, right?
Right, so that's really important because I think, like Kwan said, that AI is not just large language models such as ChatGPT or perhaps even Gemini. And these also come under the category of assistive AI models that are assistive to conversation and research from the internet, which is important definitely, but that's one very small part of what AI constitutes. It's really interesting because I want to tackle this question from a two-part perspective. One is essentially this large language model perspective that, the fact that within the admissions landscape, these language models are coming in order to perhaps make the admissions process easier. They can also act as some sort of like cheat codes for the admissions process as well. But stepping aside from this, I don't think AI is usually a bad thing, right? When we're talking about admissions, we're talking about AI. The one thing that we always think about is, oh, it can help us write our essays. But this is not what I'm talking about here. What I'm essentially talking about is how universities can perhaps look at the use of AI by students in a positive perspective. And that's essentially by understanding the multidisciplinary ways in which a student can tackle a subject, right? So, for example, let's assume that we have a student who wants to study psychology, or perhaps let's assume there's a student who wants to study sociology, right? These are traditionally social science and humanities backgrounds. But with the help of AI, you can actually help build projects and build kind of research interests that scatter across disciplines, right? And that is what admissions officers are interested in. So when we talk about AI, I'd like for this conversation itself and for all of us to kind of keep our minds open to the fact that when we're talking about AI, it's not just large language models, it's a lot of different stuff that comes within it, underneath it. And that is where I think research shines. And Kwan, please feel free to chime in here.
Yeah, no, absolutely agree with everything you just said. There can be some confusion around what we mean when we say AI, so I'm really happy you kind of brought that up. And AI is kind of a huge umbrella term, where we see that the easy tools that help us in school work, kind of made it w into our lives first. But when we're talking about AI, we're talking about a lot more. We're also talking about interdisciplinary fields in like data science, advanced machine learning, even like robotics and like ways that we train machines to assist human life and solve some of the world's greatest problems right now using AI. So yeah, completely agree with everything you're saying.
Definitely. I actually have a follow-up question for you, Kwan.
Yeah.
If there was a student who perhaps, had a social science or humanities background, like I just said, for example, social science or sorry, sociology or political science, how would you perhaps imagine them integrating AI within their work?
Yeah, that's a really great question. So we have a lot of students that ask this question actually because they're usually interested in multiple different things. They have one passion, but they don't want to be left behind. They want to also know how they can integrate technology into it. So let's say, for example, you're a student that might be interested in like maybe like law school or like law in general. And you want to know how AI has a role in that. There's actually a lot of surprising integration that AI has in law at this time, as well as other social sciences and other humanitarians as well. So like AI is being used to kind of like more quickly analyze case law or collect evidence because, as you know, lawyers do a lot of reading.
Absolutely.
Yeah. But then they're also creating a lot of frameworks, kind of using like ethical frameworks and having AI assist that it's kind of like an assistant, but it's a little bit more advanced than that. It's doing some really deep analysis on case study. And there's absolutely other ways. You can use AI to, for example, if you're really passionate about, the world and humanitarians, there's a lot of interdisciplinary things in like climate change or environmental science, where you can
Right.
use AI to kind of figure out what the world might look like 10 years from now, five
Predicting
years from now.
rainfall, for example, is so crucial to our agricultural economy, for example. That's something that a lot of our students do work with, in fact. And yeah, like Kwan said, I think there's just so much to do within those fields. And I think when we kind of wrap it up and bring it back to the university admissions landscape, I'd just like to say that these are the ways in which perhaps universities are admiring the ways in which students are using AI, right? And like Kwan said again, just the ways in which these qualitative methodologies are also being developed. It's really helpful for a student to know how to run these. When they're large data sets, you don't know how to kind of manage these. That's when AI essentially comes in. So yeah, it's super important for students going into an undergrad school with this knowledge already. It can be super helpful for them, especially at an elite college. Yeah.
There's definitely a lot of depth in this topic, which I can sense from both of you. And like speaking of that depth, actually, we know that Veritas is actually engaging with a lot of AI through different programs, and maybe Kwan could help shed the light on how Veritas engages with this depth in AI.
Yeah, so to kind of talk about the depth that or the type of work that students would be doing with AI would look like with Veritas. So we have mentorship programs for students, and all of our programs are project-based learning, which means that students are connecting with some of the best researchers right now from institutions like Harvard, Yale, Oxford, other top research institutions, and they'll do either like one-on-one or some small
Mm,
cohort learning um, while we're building out research projects using AI. That gives them a chance to kind of build something that they can take with them after they're done. But not only that, learn as well, learn with the mentor, and kind of learn a lot of things that you wouldn't be able to learn in high school, but you would going into college. Things that'd be useful, like learning basics to advanced level statistics, more advanced machine learning, um, and kind of also understanding. I'm not sure how many high schools are integrating like AI courses in their
mm,
curriculum, but if you look at the increasing number of technical degrees that undergraduate that bachelor's institutions are offering, or even masters, we're seeing such a huge increase right now. That not only that, but then in the job market, they're estimating that. Like 25 to I think 30% of jobs are going to require some sort of like technical aspect to supplement. So we don't see
mm,
AI completely automating jobs right now. So
mm,
these are kind of just some kind of things to think about. We're kind of entering a new age of technology
mm,
where you want to be like if you want to be like a maybe scholar in the social science fields, you can kind of pivot
mm.
more into like a technological way that you could study that and pursue that as well.
Yeah. I think Veritas becomes like a really good pathway for a lot of kids and like adults alike, honestly, to get a head start in this new age we're going into. There's so much changing. I think PIPPAMS also works with like students very early in their journeys. And I'm actually interested to also see how we see on the PIPPM side the way like AI changes how high school students explore opportunities. If
Right.
Prithvi could enlighten us.
Right. So it's really interesting that you asked that again, and it's been really interesting looking at the SI side of things as well. So I think most of you might all know that when we're applying to the US, especially to the Common App universities, we submit about 10 activities that are fully fleshed out. And those activities must have been taken between the last 4 years of your high school, which is ninth, 10th, 11th, and 12th, right? And the same happens for the UCs across 20, 15 or 20 activities. I'm not exactly sure, but essentially a larger number than the common application. And what they have essentially um, stressed upon time and again is the quantity of activities, right? But now that there's this kind of uh, I don't know how to call this, but it is a saturation almost, essentially, with
Mm,
the number of activities students are doing or with the number of opportunities that they're engaging with, especially right now, because there's just so much out there and students want to do so much, like one said before as well.
mm,
But essentially, what becomes super interesting is that students are becoming more self-directed and exploratory. And there's this gap between curiosity and execution, which of course AI is kind of helping us with right now. But as the saturation is coming up, rather than quantity, what we are also seeing is the presence of quality. And by quality, I essentially mean that we're not saying I am interested in AI, robotics, machine learning, da da. It's essentially saying that I am interested in AI because I am interested in the way the environment is changing, and perhaps I want to
mm,
learn how to predict the patterns of rainfall in um, the middle of India, right? Or the Thar Desert, for example, right? So there's this level of depth that is coming into these student profiles. And while quantity has always mattered within these application processes, we do need to understand that beyond these application forms, what is happening is there's a lot of students who are applying for these programs. And they, apart from the quantity, because everyone gets those 10 activities, right? You can't put in any more. You need to show that whatever you're engaging with is essentially you're engaging with in depth. Um,
mm,
which is what I kind of want to talk about here, that with the advent of AI, perhaps instead of doing more in number, we are engaging with a few things in depth. And that's what I am currently seeing in the last perhaps 5 years. We've seen how profiles have developed. And these are the small changes that we're noticing within the larger ecosystem of the application process as well.
mm. Um, that was definitely like quite a really interesting analysis from Prithvi. Uh, Kwan, would you like to chip in anything, or should I move on to the next question?
Yeah, maybe I'll just add one or two things to that. Yeah, I think that's absolutely correct. When we're talking about the quality of your experiences, definitely matters, as you know, for admissions officers, especially at like more Ivy League or top universities. Um, and just kind of being able to show the impact that you're making, as well as tackle something like high level research, kind of makes you look like a student that would attend one of those universities because you're playing the role as like an academic leader or intellectual leader in that field of your passion. And then students nowadays in 2026, we've seen some really crazy projects that students have built with AI. If you think about like 5, 10, even 15 years ago, students wouldn't have been able to do those things. Like not even undergraduates would be able to create something that innovative. So there's really such potential right now while you're in high school that you'd be able to make yourself stand out at this time.
I actually have
Yeah.
a follow-up question for you, Kwan, here. You, of course, talking about how students are doing academic research, which in the past would have been done by not even by undergraduate students, right? And these projects sound so impressive. I'm also just wondering, what about providing a platform to their research, right? In the form of perhaps conferences or publications. Can you please explain to everyone how perhaps Veritas deals with these, and if you have anything to say about that?
Yeah. So, all students that join our publication program, they have kind of different dimensions of support. And the research process is led by one of our research officers at Veritas. So, they towards the end of the students like research when they finish writing their paper with their research mentor, that's when they start to kind of explore what they want to do or where they want to put this research in strategic ways. The purpose is we want students to be published in the field that they've studied. So most students are applying to or most students are getting published either like in recognized journals like high school level or some undergraduate level journals. And then I would say the next step that a lot of students do is take that further to like a national competition or like a scientific fair to show off kind of what they've been researching. And a lot of students use that to earn scholarships or kind of earn places at some really high level academic competitions.
Right, that's super interesting because I think I'd like to just say to everyone here as well that publication can be a bit of a dodgy process, and I don't know how much of you guys have, how much you guys have heard in the news and stuff, but of course, there's just so much about like is this, and this kind of also comes from Advika's question here, which we'll of course take up like properly later as well. But essentially, there's this ethical thing about publishing papers as well. And I think both Kwan's company as well as ours, I think we pride ourselves on the fact that all these journals are authentic. All these journals are either particularly for high school students, or they cater to undergraduate students, and we've able to create partnerships with them, or they do come under the scope index stuff. So definitely journal publishing can be a bit of a tricky process. That's why we do recommend that you go through a provider such as PIPPAMS, or perhaps with Veritas if you're only looking at AI, or perhaps those technical fields as well. But for example, Quant's company, PIPPAMS, if you just log in right now, you'll be able to see a bunch of journals there as well. These are fully vetted by our teams, and yeah, this can be a dodgy kind of process within the larger admissions landscape, because a lot of it can be unethical, a lot of it can be paid, but I think yeah, we have been able to kind of maintain that authenticity and clarity through the partnerships that we have built. So I'd just like to put that out there. So if any of you are looking for publications, either you can reach out to Veritas for a project, or you can come on PIPIMS and look for these journals as well.
Right. Speaking of a lot of complex research work, I think I would like to turn the webinar towards a more um, common question that students might have, but a very important question nevertheless. Um, what is exactly the workload of taking upon these complex research tasks? And the idea of making publications sounds amazing, but also very daunting for a lot of high school students. And I would love to have both of your inputs on that as well.
Yeah, I guess I can start. So the I guess the level of commitment and as well as like time that a student might require to do research in AI. For Veritas, it would look like at least 3 to 4 months is what I typically see students finish the program. With our program, so the research component is actually a one-on-one mentorship opportunity. So in that sense, it's a little more flexible. So say you have something going on in the fall, but you started your research in the summer, there may be a chance for you kind of take a month where you pick it back up with your mentor. Now it is very mentor led too. So the mentor is going to let you know kind of like the timeline, as well as our publication team of like when it's most optimal to apply to that journal. They're going to help guide you along the way based off of your research and your goals in your journal that you want to get published in. But I would say around 3 to 4 months is what you should expect. Some students maybe take a little bit longer, depending on their personal commitment. That would look like maybe 6 to 8, maybe 10 hours a week on of work, along with like some weekly meetings with your mentor as well. And kind of the type of student. So we want to also make sure that you're kind of doing well in your academics too. So kind of making sure that that you're prioritizing your own personal schoolwork, academics, and other aspects of your life is really important before considering this. We want to make sure that you're set up for success before joining a research program.
Yeah, definitely offering a lot of flexibility for any students that might be interested here. Uh, really important, especially now, like when we have so much competition and so many students stressing about every single aspect of their resume. Krivi, would you like to chip in?
Oh, definitely. I think what Kwan said is very realistic in terms of the timeline. It does take about 3 to 4 months to prepare this, to prepare it like a research project. And you do work with certain structures where you kind of build your research statement, where you do kind of decide on your methodologies and how you want to take this forward. Of course, you work on a draft and your mentor helps you. Of course, you can do these independently as well. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. I think Quant's team just ensures that the level of the project is up to the mark and that these projects can be submitted to esteemed journals, which is great for your resume. But yeah, apart from that as well, I feel like 3 to 4 months is a realistic timeline. And one thing that everyone should be kind of aware about, and if any of you are submitting to journals independently, just a PSA kind of thing, if there are any journals that are coming back to you within 1 or 2 days saying that you're accepted, it doesn't seem like the most great journal. So I would recommend you to again see where you're submitting, what kind of journal it is, and sometimes the review process can be very, very long as well. I used to publish during my undergrad studies. I remember it took me a year to publish, very, very fancy. So these things do take time, but again, with professionals such as perhaps Veritas or SI, you can perhaps do these at a faster pace with reputed journals itself. So definitely that's something that you should keep in mind. And again, the applications are supplementary things. First, you just should get your health in order, your academics in order, and everything else comes second. So once you have time and once you have space to kind of explore that intellectually, which is when you should step into the space, and it should appeal to you, right? You don't want to work on a boring project. And um, I think yeah, that's what work on interesting stuff, work on interdisciplinary stuff, work on stuff that kind of keeps you engaged. Yeah.
Mm. Yes, yeah, like speaking on managing managing timelines and managing workloads, I'd love if you could add also a note about PIPPAMS and how sort of PIPPAMS becomes relevant for a lot of high school students like dealing with these issues.
Right, definitely. Thanks for bringing that up, Sagen. I definitely feel like with the profile building aspect being so scattered, being so varied, and of course there are so many different stages for the profile building aspect that it can be difficult to navigate this, right? So some of them just are research projects, something that Quan specializes in. There's summer schools, there's academic enrichment, there's non-academic enrichments, there's social projects. Just a lot going on, yes. And I think PIPPAMS as a platform just helps you kind of see and like weed through which activities that aren't useful to you or that aren't relevant to you. And again, when we say relevant, when we say useful, we don't always mean prestigious, we don't always mean cutthroat. It essentially means that whatever you are engaging in, you have an interest in that. It has an academic story that you can kind of weave your personal statement essays around. um and like I said before, depth over quantity. So definitely there's come to PIPPAMS, come see what kind of floats your boat. There's something called the cap value. So once you fix like the subject that you want to study, the cap value can essentially tell you how relevant an activity may be to your overall profile. That's super interesting. So you can essentially just compare different activities and be like, okay, maybe I don't have time for this one, let me let this be for now. This one looks really, really good. This is something I should take out time for. It just helps you with that. So definitely do check it out. We have free and premium versions both. You can just sign on independently. It should be great.
Uh, we actually have some questions from the audience here, and I would just like to start taking some of these, if that is all right. Uh, we have one question from Advika, and Advika, difficult question, I would say. What ethical concerns should around AI should students be aware of while building projects? It's a very good question, Advika. Thank you so much. Would anyone like to take this?
Juan, would you like to lead with this?
Yeah, this is a common question. I hear a lot, especially with AI ethical concerns. Absolutely. I think we should always be cautious when dealing with AI and data, specifically with the data part. I think so. For this question, it kind of depends on the project we're talking about. Um, Typically, most of like the fear we see with AI is with like privacy, and how like big companies are and governments are using AI. Um, and I would say when it comes to like how that intersects with academic research, those are kind of some different things. I'll kind of start off with that. But with Veritas AI programs, actually all programs include an AI and ethics component to it. So you'll be working with the mentor to kind of diagnose like the different problems that we see how with AI and how to kind of go around operating ethically. Um, in the future, we don't want to, misuse AI. But with this type of research projects that students are building, these are more projects that contribute to the advancement of science in academia in the respective fields. So I think that is a question that might depend on the field that the student is researching, but then also to kind of just be aware that we are really more concerned about how like those who have access to lots of data, big organizations are using AI yeah.
Lovely. No, I do agree with everything that was said by Quan. I think I'd just like to add a couple of lines. So Adhika, why I said your question was absolutely great is because ethics within research have been a long part of the discussion way before AI came into the game. And there's when students used to work with perhaps like biotech stuff, anything to do with animals, anything to do with humans, lab testing, all of that. This is all a part of ethics, right? And now that we're civilized people, we have laws around around these kind of research topics and stuff. Um, and your question is relevant because AI is still developing. AI is again, it's a non-territory kind of space, because you don't need visa to access these, right? You can just enter any space whatsoever and explore that. And I think that's when, and of course, while laws are important, they will show up at some point within the next perhaps 20 years along the lines of AI, right? And along the lines of perhaps different kind of ethical and moral kind of complexities around this, which will be published in the future. Um, I think at the moment you can think of this as just general rules about firstly, like Kwan said about data, that it's very freely available everywhere, but that's something that you should avoid. Not accessing data or not including data in your study that is perhaps copyrighted by someone else or perhaps that is private. So that's one rule of thumb you should have. And in general, the other kind of biotechnology stuff, the medicine stuff, it still holds here. It still holds very, very true. Make sure you're not causing any human harm. Make sure you're not disrespecting a religion, a gender, a sex, etc., etc. I think those rules just prevail. And by the until the time we have, proper rules and, systems that kind of govern the artificial intelligence space, I think we as young researchers, me not so young anymore, unfortunately, but we as researchers need to use our kind of moral pendulum in the right way in that sense. So that's a responsibility that I think we all have towards society and towards academia as a field, and that's something we should uphold. Do you have any follow-up questions, Advika? All right, maybe wait for Advika to get back. All right, the next question. Kwan, maybe this one's an interesting one for you as well. When is the right time for research projects. Jenny asks. Her son is in grade 9 and will be starting grade 10 in August.
Yeah. I also get asked this question quite a lot. So, this is a great question because, like, I think, it also depends on the student. For Veritas AI, the way that we kind of gauge whether a student's ready to engage in more high level research would be, first looking at their coding ability. Um, Now we don't look for like master coders in high school or competition winners. That's absolutely not the prerequisite. But we do look for a student that has some fluency in either Python or maybe some other language and has already built out some sort of like project that they can showcase that they are confident in coding independently in some more like basic like machine learning and statistical models. Um, that would be kind of like the technical start. If you haven't, if your student has no experience coding yet, we actually have a boot camp program called AI Scholars where you learn pretty much everything about coding, but then also the fundamental topics in AI that would transition you into a research roadmap trajectory where you can follow up with a research program right after. And then I guess the second aspect, aside from the coding, if we're talking about just the research aspect in general, would be kind of determining what your further goals are. Like what if you were to do research, what would you want to do with it? What kind of problems would you want to solve? What kind of topics would you want to research in? After that's kind of been considered, I would say that like 10th grade is actually a reasonable time to start doing research. Most of our students that do the research fellowship are actually between 10th, 11th graders. We have a lot of 12th graders that also do it. But I see actually mostly 10th and 11th grade students do it because that's when they have the most time to explore in high school when they're in 12th grade. They also are still doing research, I'll say, but we do see some students who maybe take time to focus more on college apps and scholarships, which is why doing research before you begin your application might be a little bit more strategic.
Definitely, I do agree with that. And Jenny, if I may ask, your son is in studying in India or elsewhere?
Yeah, we are in Mumbai and
Mumbai.
we are in Aditya Birla World Academy.
All right. Oh,
So,
great.
so
We
just
work with
wanted to know okay, how even, that would it just help even in the ISF competitions and
right.
science competitions later?
Right. I do agree with Kwan and Jenny in that case. So I've kind of handled the iris stuff within the company for very, very long. And for anyone who wants to make it to ISEF, I think the only real advice we do give is do start early. Because the iris submissions, I think you can begin when you're 12 years old any which way.
Yeah, and
So
I think you
it's
can submit in November, December.
November, December,
Yeah.
correct, absolutely. And it just gives you more chances at this point, right? So, if it doesn't work out this year, you can perhaps like revise the project again, see what comes up, and then try again. In my opinion, Iris is super, super competitive. Getting to ISEF is super, super competitive. But within our company ecosystem, we've had about 3 students in the past who've made it to ISEF. In case you would like to connect, we'd be happy to kind of set up a call for you as well. But yes, we do work with lots of high intensity STEM students, and ISEF, yeah, Iris looks great, definitely, and we wish him all the best.
And if you could, thank you. And if you could just share the details about the AI boot program that which was mentioning. Thank you.
Yeah,
Sure.
absolutely.
Yes.
I can share them with everyone, after this as well. We're offering them this summer, fall, winter, and spring too.
Lovely.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions that we may take? All right, I guess that's it. Kwan, would you like to say any closing notes? Anything at all?
I guess I'll just thank everyone for having me, give me a chance to collaborate with PIPPAMS. This is really a great event, and I kind of see a lot of, our students are interested in the same things. Hopefully we can do the best to support them in their goals. And just kind of to share, I can also provide some of my information, contact information. So if you are curious more about the different programs, and how to get started, feel free to reach out to me anytime. I'd be happy to set up a short chat where we can kind of walk through some of those options.
Lovely. Kwan, if you could just drop your email address here on chat, everyone
Yeah,
can.
yeah, I'll put it right in the chat here.
Lovely, guys. Thank you so much for coming. This was super interesting. Of course, when it comes to STEM and research, it can be a bit of a complicated space. It can be a bit intimidating, but we really hope that we answered some of your questions, taken the stress off it. And of course, if you have any questions, you can write to Kwan, or you could write to my colleague Rajni on the SI side of things, and the PIPM side of things. But thank you so much. And yes, see you again all very soon, hopefully. Bye.